Hey all, welcome back to another one of my Making a Murderer thought diaries. This thought diary is going to be a lead up to covering one of this case's biggest parts, that truthers all around the world are asking the ultimate question. Who is the prime Denny suspect? I'm going to be exploring this subject in a unique way than I have ever done before. So this will be split up in a few part diary entries so I can cover it all. I said it from the beginning of my thought diaries. I wanted balance and to separate two forces in this case. Law enforcement versus the real killer. Again, I'm not saying that it's not possible that one or the other is solely responsible for it all, but I just wanted to break it down so it's not so complex to follow. As you may have seen in my last few diary entries, I have covered law enforcement in all different ways, with 3 amazing interviews, all adding their own pieces to our puzzle, by using logical breakdowns while maintaining fairness, playing the devil's advocate. Also, gathering as much information from documents available, and of course, listening to supporters. An overall sense, I try to construct it into 2 categories, those being law enforcement, possible planters, where they have seized an opportunity in the murder or disappearance of Teresa, committed by someone else, but use it to their advantage to plant evidence against Stephen Avery. 2 being framers, where they watched, waited, and saw Teresa as a golden opportunity to stop the lawsuit against themselves and any other personal motive they had, by using this innocent woman as a sacrifice to frame and set up Stephen for the crime that they committed. So to bring balance, it's time we slowly head towards the Denny side of it. Before we get there, I feel as though we need to pick up some foundation pieces first and put it towards the frame of our puzzle. By working back on the outside, it's going to make things more clearer. So when we get to the heart of the puzzle, it all fits in much more easier. My thoughts had been coming in fast and heavy, and I wanted to capture it all, but I knew it was impossible to write it all down in a diary. While I was sitting down trying to gather it all together, I hear this quote from Lieutenant Joe Kendra on my television.
They're a giant puzzle, so you have to figure out which one fits where.
After hearing that, it reassured me I'm following the right direction in my own thought process for this case. So, taking all of those thoughts, I started to reach back out and continue to speak to the professionals in all the different fields, hoping that they can offer me advice and guidance. They all said the same thing in regards to this case. In fact, any case that matters. There are 3 key words you must follow: perception, interpretation, and patterns. In fact, patterns is how they put it. It's all in the detail. They stressed, each piece of the puzzle has a detail on it, the way it's shaped, the colour, and the pattern lines that once put together with the right pieces form our desired puzzle picture we are building. So for the last few weeks, I have been doing exactly that, and I want to share with you all what I have so far. It is still a work in progress. It somewhat feels like it's never-ending piles of pieces at the moment. I feel like I've pulled apart our puzzle and I'm starting all over again. Regardless, I'm looking at it with a different perception. There's keyword number 1. I wanted to start by learning and truly understanding what they meant when they said, find those patterns. By taking it back to basics, I realized pretty quickly it's easier to start with patterns, for they are the true representation of facts. Once I establish those, then it's working out if my interpretation is right. So I thought, okay, how do I do that and where do I start? This is where I found a very simple starting point, and I wanted to use it as a tester. Like an onion, it's about going layer by layer until I reach the core of what it is I'm looking for in terms of patterns that I'm seeking. So here is what I did. I picked a simple aspect of the RAV. I'll be honest, and I even mentioned this in Thought Diaries Part 1. The RAV as a vessel itself I wasn't ever interested in covering. It has been done, and I was like, you know what? I can't offer anything more. But I saw an opportunity in it, ironically, to start teaching myself how to go deeper and work out a formula to capture those patterns. Which brings me to another irony. The results I found while doing this RAV pattern project may in fact be misleading perceptions out there that's in the public. So let's begin. I went to spreadsheet format and I started by going through document by document, dispatch calls. At first I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just started to recall what I was finding. Once I had done a few things, it was only once I stopped and looked at it did the patterns start to form for me. This is how I did it. I took the RAV's color. It's a simple one to look at as there is a lot of discussion about it, having the color up for debate because there is so many different factors as well. Personal perception, keyword number 2, lighting and conditions it was seen under, the multiple photographs out there, even whether you believe there is one RAV, two RAV, or a hybrid RAV. You get my drift. And of course, witness sightings. Anyway, before I start the breakdown, this is a disclaimer. What I'm about to explain to you doesn't mean I'm right, nor do I think I'm right. I'm basing this off things that anyone can find out there. It's just to show a different way to interpret things in this case. If anything, it should remind us to always be thinking for ourselves. Don't take what you hear in the community and run with it. What I have put together is quite interesting. However, remember, this is just a tester to teach myself about simple patterns and how to formulate them. So once I go deeper, I can construct them to suit the certain patterns I'm trying to capture. So I go to my spreadsheet format and I start to document everything that I see. I broke it down into 10 categories. This is my first layer of my onion. I did this by capturing these points. Number 1 was the color of the car that a witness says, the date of the witness, who the witness was, if there was any noticeable damage, other keywords used to describe the vehicle that they're allegedly seeing, the location of the RAV and the condition, whether it was inside or outside, reporting officers, who was making the documentations that this is what the witnesses were saying. I did this one because, again, it's like trying to capture those patterns. I wanted to see whether, if I have one officer constantly saying the RAV was green and then having 3 other officers doing other reports and them saying that it was teal or blue or any other color, I wanted to see if there was a pattern there. Just, if maybe an officer was, interpreting his own thoughts in that. So I wanted to see the pattern in that. I think that's crucial as well. I also recorded for my own personal reference where I found this information, whether it was in CASO or whether it was a dispatch call. I also have captured the date reported versus to the date that they say they've seen the RAV. And the last one I wrote was it confirmed to be Teresa's RAV versus a witness who just sees a vehicle that may not even have any connection to the case. So out of all that, I inputted all my information and it brought me to 12 independent accounts of witnesses stating that they've witnessed some kind of vehicle matching the description, and I came up with 12. Then I peeled away that next layer of my onion and I broke it down yet again. And I broke it down to 9 of those categories, which was how many of those witnesses have physically seen it, how many of those in the color aspect of it, how many of it in question, whether it was a witness that can confirm that they if it was just a witness or if it was a family member. I did the inside outside conditions of when they saw the car. My next point was how many people brought up that it was an SUV. officers, how many officers have been reporting on that, whether it was debunked, and the last point was how many other matching descriptions matches Teresa's car. Once I'd done that, I then broke it down even more simpler, and I did it in color coordinated. Primary green, primary blue, and unknown. So I made it so simple. It's simple maths, but it's really effective because I could just see it. So this is what I got. So with green as the primary color, we get the word greenish blue, but green being the dominant color is how I recorded it. So out of all the 12 accounts, green had only 3 people say that was their primary color. Out of those 3 of them did say that they physically saw a vehicle that may or may not have been Teresa's, but it was green. Out of those 3, one of them is in question because it was actually Karen Horbach. The primary color is questioned because she did say dark green, kinda. Out of those 3, there is one witness there that claims that they saw a vehicle there, but they can't even say whether it's related to the case because they've never seen Teresa and they've never seen the car. None of them was reported to have seen the car inside. All 3 have said that they saw the car outside. Only one of those accounts said it was an SUV. There was 2 reporting officers. None of it's been debunked. We don't know whether it was hers. We don't know if it wasn't. And out of the 3, only 2 of them added details that could potentially be Teresa's vehicle. Then I went to unknown color. How many times was it brought up that they had given other descriptions, but they didn't actually bring up the color? And that was 3. 3 of those said they witnessed the vehicle, but they didn't actually give a color description. Out of those 3, all of them are only just witnesses. There is no connecting element that they even know Teresa's car. 2 of them claim that there was no damage to the car, yet one of them claims that there was a hole in the windscreen and a hole in the door frame. And this is in the same location that another witness has seen it and didn't claim that they saw any damage. All of them said that they were outside. Only one of them refers to it as an SUV. There is only one reporting officer on documentation form of these 3, and the rest were dispatch calls. One of them has been debunked, and I'm going to say that's the one that has the description of it being with holes in the door, because in the report it does say we followed this up and it has been confirmed that this was not Teresa's car. And out of all those 3, none of them gave any other specific details that linked Teresa's car to it being hers. Now it takes us to primary blue. How many people said that they witnessed this car and the primary color was blue? 6. 6 people stated that they have all witnessed Teresa's car in physical shape or body, and the primary color is blue. One of those, none of them claim that they saw it inside. All 6 of them said that they saw it in the condition of outside, so in the elements of, weather reporting, so whether it's sunny, whether it was cloudy, raining. Again, all primary color is blue. All 6 of it refer to it as an SUV. There is 3 reporting officers that claim that their primary color is blue. There is none that has been debunked, and out of all the 6, 4 of them have claimed or had made statements that had other connecting factors to it being Teresa's car. So again, in summary, we have, out of the 12, we've narrowed it down. I also wanted to go that little bit step further, and just to let you guys know that the very first witness that ever gave a primary colour was from Stephen Schmidt, and his account of the primary colour was on the 3rd of the 11th of '05. Again, this was the very first witness to be able to describe her car, beside obviously her mother, Karen, already calling in. And he gave the description of a blue SUV. So again, in conclusion and where I'm at, her RAV was described as being blue as the primary colour, with 6 out of 12 independent accounts having green and unknown colour, both sitting at 3 independent accounts each. Again, like I said before, it's simple maths equations, but it's effective because it puts the picture out there more clearer, and it stops us from assuming which one it was. Was it more blue or was it more green? We now have statistics that's showing that it was primary blue. So after working on that, like I said, although I haven't completely finished it and it needs a lot of work, I then went into this new thought process. How this case's biggest issue is perception and misinterpretations that then manifest into misinformation. It also now explains why these keywords were given to me. From that RAV4 layer breakdown alone, I see 2 things in the truther community. 1, interpreting information out there without checking things first. It can be misleading. I, for one, am guilty of this. I was even under the assumption that the primary colour, being either green or blue, was equally tied, which by the pattern finding, it's not. The primary colour described is blue and it's quite dominant. Then it takes me to number 2, witnesses' perception. How credible are they really, and how do they fit in within the case of our puzzle? Remember, this all has an objective, and it's getting us to the DENNY side of it. But I've got to slow it down piece by piece. We may even find our DENNYs on the way. Don't get me twisted. Witnesses in any crime scene can be the smoking gun. You can't discredit them completely. For all it takes is one credible witness that sees, hears, observes any crime committed that helps law enforcement tip off a suspect and at best creates a timeline of events. Ultimately, that leads to a prosecution. They essentially can be that one missing puzzle piece. However, like we have seen in cases all around the world, they also can bring false, tampered accounts that aren't always accurate, truthful, or in some severe cases, have a sinister motive. For example, we can't ignore this one. We have Penny, for example, in Stephen Avery's 1985 case. She identified Stephen, and we now know how wrong she was. A witness to her own crime, and she was misguided and picked the wrong man. We have Ryan Ferguson case, Dream Killer, where the gentleman, Mr. Trump, lied under oath and recanted his statement later down the track, claiming he gave a false witness account because he felt pressure from the police because of his own dark history. Or the female witness, Shauna, who claims to have witnessed the 2 men fleeing the car park. Although what she did state was based on truth, she eventually testified under oath that she had told the prosecutor, Mr. Crane, that the man she saw the night of the murder was not Ferguson. She claims Mr. Crane repeatedly tried to get her to implicate him and that he had become threatening during her last conversation. And here's one last example. There's the new show currently trending on Netflix, Trial 4. The woman witness Rosa, who claims she saw Sean leaning down beside the car of the officer killed. Yet, she didn't even pick him in a lineup straight away. It was only after, when she was asked to talk privately to the detective, did she then come back and was able to identify him in his picture lineup. Not to mention the most alarming part revealed, that she was also related to one of the detectives. So to me, she's a witness with no credibility. Like what I just went through. We also have witnesses saying that they saw a vehicle that may or may not even be related to Teresa's case. And here's some facts for you. Did you know that profiles in training with the FBI, they get put into unexpected situations? Although these are constructed and controlled events, to see how they interpret stressful situations and to train their brain into profiling every environment, being aware at all times of their surroundings and the people around them. For example, and I'm going to make this quick, they all go into this controlled event. They think that they're in regards to another project. What they don't know is it is the project. To see how good they are at being witnesses, capturing details and memory control. In simpler terms, profiling. They are all given tasks and then all of a sudden an armed robbery is happening in front of them. It happens really quickly. Just enough time for them to be brought to their attention that their surroundings have been interrupted or has changed. Afterwards, they all get called in independently and ask, 1. What they observed. 2. Any specific details of the perpetrator. 3. Any other key factors they observed in the situation. And 4. What their body felt and what they were thinking under that stress. Their job is to relay as much information they can. The problem in these studies is perception, and this can be altered by other factors as simple as angles and even timing. One personal interpretation may see something that the other doesn't, all because of a way a person was positioned at a split moment. In summary, statistics show that out of the 4 subjects, 99% of the 4 get the narrative correct that they all saw an armed robbery. But beyond that, not all details are picked up. Like I was touching base on before, timing is a factor. How long do they have to wait to be questioned about events? Have they had enough time to process it and maybe even possibly overthink it? Again, we're talking about training profilers. It differs and memory isn't everyone's strength, but that's what they specialize in, so their observation skills are much more advanced. So what does that mean for the average citizen that witnesses a traumatic event if some of these trainee profiles don't even soak it all in? But going back to the Making a Murderer case, here's some witnesses that I find interesting. It is only a handful that I'm going to discuss. It's just enough to show you the pattern. Remember, again, it's all about their perception. Also note, some of these have potentially been debunked. So although they are witnesses, they provide nothing to the case. Like my RAV format, I did it in 7 categories. That was my first layer of my onion. I recorded by doing it by witnesses, what they seen, was it debunked, for my own benefit, where I found this information, reasons for the debunction if there was any, the date, who it was and who it was reported by. So the first one I'm going to go into is a Julie Sadler. So she claims on the, now I'm going to say my date as the Australian version. We actually have used our dates and our months the opposite way around. So when I wrote all my notes, I did do it my way, not the way that you guys in America or other areas do it, which is your month first and then your date. So when you hear me saying dates, they'll be like, oh my God, she got it wrong. No, I'm doing it Australian version. So this was recorded from Julie on the 10th of the 11th of 2005. She claims what she saw was her and her husband was in Menards and she saw Stephen Avery buying a saw. She says, I'm pretty confident that it was a saw. I'm not all 100%, but there looks like a saw. So of course the investigators did go and try to debunk this, which they did. They obviously got the receipt of what Stephen did buy that day in the shop or the hardware store or whatever you guys call it over there. And it was not a saw. So again, she brought nothing to the case, just a false accusation. And I think that it's really important that we talk about the date to show the pattern of it. It was the 10th of the 11th. So by this stage, it was already reports out that they had found Stephen Avery's burn pit having bones of maybe Teresa's in there. So she's inserting herself in the case by saying, hey, listen, to get her into that pit, possibly he cut her up. And I'm the one that saw him with the saw, which we now know is not true. Another interesting one I found was, now this one is interesting, so you have to bear with me. And that is the protein guy, which is Dan. He claims that he saw possibly Teresa's RAV on the salvage yard on the 31st of the 10th. Now, I wanted to write it was debunked, but I can't, because when I did some more looking into it, it seems as though that Dean or Jerry actually brought him up in court to try to establish a timeline, saying that it could be in fact true what he saw. The problem that I have with this is he claims that when they did the initial interview, he said, I spoke to Mama Avery and I believed that it could have been her RAV, and he put it at the timeline in the afternoon. When they went, he actually called back, and what he had done was he provided logbooks, because everywhere he goes he has to log. And when he went through his logs, he actually provided that he was there outside the time frame, so there is no way he could have physically seen that car. He claims that he logged in at 12:26 and he had left at 1300 hours. So if we know that Teresa got there between, say, 14:30 and left by 14:45, there is no way he saw that. So even one of the officers wrote in there, now that this log has been provided of Dan's movements on the day, his timeline does not fit in here. The next one was I'm going to say I'm still looking into this one, because it kind of has a pattern of, it has a pattern to it that if it gets looked into and there's that one little Easter egg in there, it's quite huge. By face value, it's just a witness. There's no credibility behind it. But again, it's very interesting. And that is a Mark E. Herod. He reports that he is a witness to speaking to Teresa the night before the 31st on a website like Yahoo. And they were through chat. And he was saying things like, Teresa knew she was going to the Averys. We brought up Stephen. He made some really interesting points in there. Like he details, like he said that Teresa said he wasn't a bad guy, but her friends were telling her to stay away from him. To me, that's very interesting. Like I want to know who these friends are that are apparently warning her against Stephen Avery, and why that would even come up. She was only doing a professional jobs for him. It's not like they were hanging out and the friends were saying to her, stop hanging out with Stephen, like what they were telling her to stop doing her job. That's just a very bizarre comment, and I'm interested in the details of that. Also, again, he states that she had mentioned that she was going there the next day, which kind of makes me go, what the F? Because Stephen didn't make that appointment till the following morning. So how would she have known in advance that she was going to the Stephen Avery's when allegedly it wasn't even booked? So again, this is what I mean about eyewitnesses. They give these details, but it's like, where are they getting this from? Another one is, now this one I just kind of giggled at. So Jill and Thomas, they're a husband and wife. They made this, they call in on the 10th of the 11th of 05, same time as Julie did. And what they claim they saw was Stephen going into the gravel pit. And I find this interesting because is this part of setting up a narrative? Like, what? You didn't call in when you physically saw him apparently going into it and it didn't raise any alarms. But now all of a sudden he's now being accused, or there's an allegation that he was potentially involved in this lady's disappearance and murder. All of a sudden now is relevant and it's significant that he's going into the gravel pit, when at that point of time it wasn't out of character. So again, another person inserting themselves into the case doesn't provide any information that is used at all, but it just makes you wonder, what is the motive and what's going on with these witnesses, and how much of these witnesses can you trust? It leaves me with the question, why do some of these witnesses create a narrative and insert themselves into a case? Is it to stroke their own egos, to feel important that they have been able to provide information? Or do they generally just want to help and have interpreted what they have seen to be factual detail in a case? Which now brings me to the next part of these keywords. I'll be continuing with the whole patterns, but I'll be more exploring into the perception and the interpretation that actually comes out of the truther community. And it's one step closer to going right into the Denny's. So while I've been doing all my research and I've been doing all this, back and forth, recording and documenting all this information, I've been listening and also reading comments out there. And there seems to be one occurring statement, and that is, what the fuck was Bobby doing watching Teresa out the window for like 5-10 minutes? It's weird and it's suspicious. He can't remember certain things, but he remembers everything she was wearing. This is actually incorrect, and it's really misguided information out there in the truther community. Let me explain why. By using the same format like I did with the RAV and the witnesses, I went back to the documentation and I started to document it in spreadsheet form, and this is what I actually found. On the 31st of the 10th of 05, there is actually 3 witnesses who make an account of what they described Teresa was wearing, or physical description of her of that day. I will start with the first person who is asked to give a detailed description, and that was Stephen Schmidt. And he was his interview came as early as the 3rd of the 11th. So the day that she was reported missing, they went to him and they had a conversation. I did this again with my onion layer philosophy. I did it in 9 categories. Who saw her, the top she was wearing description, the pants description, the jacket description, any physical description, the date, obviously, that the interview was recorded, for my own personal reference, where I found this information, how many officers were reporting on this information, and total of, out of the 4 categories, how many did they get and feel of detail. Again, I really want to stress with the pattern philosophy here as well. I'm recording the officers because we all claim, could have this officer just kept writing what he needed to write for his own, narrative to get the case going. So I want to keep an eye on them as well. So in a sense, although I've already covered the law enforcement side of it, I've also incorporated it back in just to keep an eye on them. I'm not going to ever let them get away with anything either. So by recording their movements in this as well, I just think it's really, really crucial. So we'll start again, like I said, with Stephen. So Stephen's first account was what was her top of her description. His description was she was wearing a white button-down t-shirt or top of some type. Her pants description was blue jeans. He claims that he saw her wearing a summer jacket, color unknown. And that was reported by a Uyghur. The next person that was interviewed was, in fact, Bobby Dassey. His top description was nil. He never says what color he saw her top. Her pants description was nil. He never says what color pants she was wearing. When asked what her jacket description was, he claims it was a dark waist-length jacket. Physical description, he said she was skinny with brownish hair. This was on the 5th of the 11th of 05. Dietering was the one that actually reported this. The last person of witness who saw Teresa was Jo Ellen Zipper. Her description is as followed. She claims that Teresa's top description was a white top. Her pants description was blue jeans. Her jacket description was a dark waist-length jacket. Her physical description was brownish hair, length unknown. This was the statement was taken on the 6th of the 11th of 05, and Dieting again was the reporting officer. So again, simplifying it, let's go to the next level of that. This is the summary. So out of the 4 physical descriptions that anyone can give, I'll go from the bottom up. Bobby gave the least. He only gave 2 out of 4. Followed by him was Stephen. He gave 3 out of 4 physical and descriptions of her. So that's like, okay, he's more than Bobby. And the person who gave obviously the most detailed description of Teresa was Jo Ellen. 4 out of 4 details she was able to pick describe a top, the pants, the jacket, and a physical description, whereas the 2 gentlemen kind of balanced between them both. But again, Bobby coming in last. So it also makes me wonder, are people interpreting this bad idea that Bobby allegedly described Teresa to a T because it fits their theory that Bobby did it? I've said it so many times. Just because one thing fits, don't ignore the 9 other points that don't. It's because of this reason you have to be careful, because you're only setting yourself up for obtaining false information that will block any new information coming in or being able to open yourself up to see other things clearer. That kind of takes me to the next thing. A lot of supporters bring up how Bobby got his back photographed because of these scratches. However, what they don't take into consideration, he was not the only one. I also documented the pattern to show this as well. So the way I formulated this one was really straightforward. 4 categories: the markings on the body and who they belong to. Was it photographed? Was it documented? And for my own personal reference, where I found all this information. So I'm going to start with the first one. The reason why I'm starting with this one is because it is not kind of fitting into the whole pattern, but it still needs to be brought up. And that's Ryan. So Ryan had scratches on his hand. Although he wasn't photographed by any law enforcement and it wasn't documented, but it was photographed and recorded by the media. And it's been enough that it sparked Kathleen's interest that she's even added it to brief. So I really felt like I needed to bring that up regardless, because again, we're looking for patterns here. And sometimes the detail in those patterns aren't always the ones that are straightforward and are on pieces of paper to be found, for example. The next obvious person is Bobby. Again, he had markings on his back, the scratches. Was it a puppy? Was it not from a puppy? Regardless, it was photographed. It was documented by law enforcement. The next subject was Stephen Avery. We all know that Stephen Avery had a cut on his finger. It was photographed. It was documented. The other person that was photographed was, in fact, Chuck Avery. He had, the photos I have seen is of his face, and it does look like it's just from wearing his glasses, nothing significant, but there is apparently other photos. I'm not going to tell you what is allegedly the photos of or what areas they are of, because I have not physically seen them, and I am not going to interpretate them in any manner that they may not be. All I am aware of is people have seen them, and that there is other photos of markings on his body. Again, it was photographed by law enforcement. It was documented by law enforcement. The next person I am bringing up is Earl Avery. Now, Earl doesn't appear to have any kind of markings or had any kind of documentation regarding any markings or photographs. But I'm bringing him up because when I was doing this research and I was, going into all the documents and I was cross-referencing everything that I could, a lot of people were saying, are you sure Earl wasn't? And I just wanted to clear that up, that in all the documentations I found, there is no indication that Earl was photographed for any reason. So I just wanted to put that in as well, trying to find the balance of fairness. I brought Ryan in there to show that he had a marking on his body that wasn't taken serious by the law enforcement. And I wanted to add Earl in there because, again, he didn't have anything photographed because he didn't have anything. So I just wanted to talk about that as well. Now we get to where I was directing this puzzle from the start of this upcoming thought diaries, the Denny's, and capturing the information to find the pattern. I'm going to end this here and go into the Denny's with another thought diary entry, as the next one goes deep. Thanks for watching. If anyone finds any pieces to the puzzle, be sure to let me know. Until next thought diary, Kel.